Hi everyone, and welcome back to Something is Up. Today, I am joined by retired Brigadier General Mr. Pierre Bescond. Now back in civilian life, Mr. Bescond is a French aerospace engineer, and he was a senior institutional figure with a long career at the highest level of the French space and defense establishment. He was trained in elite military and engineering institutions and spent his professional life in senior technical and leadership roles within the French National Space Agency. During his career, he served as the director of the Guiana Space Center, later as director of the space programs, and eventually as Inspector General overseeing major operational and strategic activities. As part of this responsibility, he was also connected to the French unit tasked with studying unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, working from inside the national space and defense system. Mr. Bescond was an important member of the COMETA group, which produced the COMETA Report, a landmark strategic and scientific assessment of UFOs and unidentified anomalous phenomena, written by senior military officers, scientists, and high-level institutional experts. This report is significant because it treated the UFO issue as a serious matter of national interest, not as speculation or belief. In this conversation, we discuss the context in which the COMETA report was produced, why this subject was addressed at such high institutional levels, and what changes when the UFO and UAP topic is examined from inside the system rather than from the margins. This is my conversation with retired Brigadier General Pierre Bescond. Enjoy.
Mr. Bescond, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you again for being part of this, for allowing me the time to ask you a few questions. We met briefly at the third symposium of the Sol Foundation in Italy, an important event that came to Europe this time, in a moment where a lot of people believe that when we talk about UFOs or UAPs, the way we call it today, this is a US phenomenon, and so it has to be connected to US military secret technology that is coming out. But the reality is that this is a phenomenon that is very old and is global. And you are an example of someone that both privately and as part of French military have been looking into this phenomenon for some time. And you are among one of the authors of probably the most important report that ever came out on the UFO phenomenon, which is the COMETA Report. Now, I've done already an introduction about you, sir, but if you want to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a bit more about your background and how you started your career and then how you came in contact with this phenomenon would be fantastic.
All right. Basically, I am a military engineer, and I was specialized pretty quickly in space, in actual fact. But that's not how I came to UFOs. I came to UFOs when I was based in England, at the Embassy of France in England, where I was linking for the collaboration projects, military projects between France and the UK. And at one point, I was reading things about UFOs at that time. And at one point, there was a magazine in France, which is called Lumière dans la nuit, which I read. And I was approached by these guys asking me whether I would like to be their correspondent in the UK for France. My answer was no, because I would not want to mix up my actual job and UFOs. But later on, after a few years, when I joined CNES, the French space agencies, I was at one point head of the launching range of Ariane in Kourou, But then afterwards, I came down to Toulouse to start the Directorate for Operations, Satellite Operations. And for one reason that I don't remember, GEIPAN, which is the body that deals with UFOs for tests, was part of this Directorate of Operations. So I was then very much faced with the actual problem of UFOs officially. So I did that for a few years. And much later on, when the COMETA, which is a group that worked from an institute in France, which is involved in security, defense and security, they decided that it was about time that they produced a new report on UFOs, because they had done one in the 1977 in actual fact. So in the 1990s, they decided it was about time to work again on the subject. And of course, they called on me to be a representative from CNES. So I joined this group, and this is the group that we called COMETA, which means Committee for Advanced Studies or whatever. And we produced a report. The objective of this report was to just alert the government and the political people that we did not know what these UFOs were, but if they were faced at one point by anything not normal, they should be ready to react. So they should. So we wanted to brief them on what the topic was and how they possibly could react if they were faced with one big announcement. That was not a big success because they were not very much interested. To them, the short term is more interesting than the long term. So it was not a big success, but the COMETA report was distributed around the world. We produced the English version of it as well. So that became the basic report for UFOs, as you said yourself. So I was part of that. And also at one point, the AAAF, Association Aéronautique et Astronautique de France, which is the association which deals with space and aeronautics, created a working group on UFOs. So of course, since I was a member of AAAF, I joined that group as well. So this has been my participation in the topic. That's about it. And I was called upon by the Sol Foundation when they organized this this conference in Milan, because they wanted me to either make a presentation or, as they said, sit on a fireside conversation, which I did. So that was, I was impressed because the Sol Foundation is pretty young, and they were created about 3-4 years ago. And what I saw in this conference was a very big success. And as you said before, many people believe that it's only a US problem. It's not, in actual fact. The only new thing is that since the US now officially have accepted to speak about the topic through the RO, the group that they've created on this, now, since the Americans speak of it, it's going to become important. But it's not American, it's all over the world. I mean, we have seen all governments, all countries working on the topic.
Yeah, and this is a very important point. But so, just to make a lot of people still don't know anything about this topic, right? Although it's a topic that has been reported in history, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of books and articles and reports that talk about seeing these objects in the sky, or coming out of the water, or coming from orbit to atmosphere and then into the water and back in orbit, etc. The majority of people still don't know anything about. And so an important aspect is you were tasked officially during your work in the French Space Agency and as part of the French Air Force to investigate this topic, but not just because this was a topic of curiosity. Military people were actually witnessing events that they could not explain, and that were not only in your territory, but all over the world, right? So can you tell us some of the events that then led to you getting involved? What were the most, and why was there a worry that it was a military problem, or that it could become a military problem for France, from Europe, etc.?
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect. In actual fact, the GEIPAN is CNES, it's a French space agency, and it's civilian. And quite frankly, we are having, or we still have, the same problem as everybody with the military. The military don't like to speak about the topic. I have a good example, a very good friend of mine who was studying with me at the same institute, the HDN. At one point, he was in charge of a part of the military where I knew that he was forced into looking into these things. And I asked him whether he was dealing with the topic, and he said, "Well, no." So that's confidential from the military guys. They don't like to speak about it because they don't understand either. So they don't like, when it comes to possibly security reasons, they don't like to say that they don't know. So our approach was absolutely civilian, but it was welcomed by the government, the police department, the gendarmerie. They all liked it because they have a good number of people going to them saying, "I've seen something," and they're scared. And the police and the gendarmerie, these guys are willing to make sure that these people are no longer afraid of the thing. So when they had GEIPAN facing us, that could, not always, but quite often, give explanations, then they could reassure the people that came to them. So we had a good collaboration with the police as a whole, and we still have with the GEIPAN, but not really with the military guys.
Understood. And when you started the report was not only limited to what was happening in France and the reports in France. If I'm not mistaken, you took upon yourself to actually look at many more cases all over Europe and even beyond Europe. From, I think, the Roswell incident that was very famous, that sparked a lot of controversy, but still a lot of people now are re-evaluating that incident in recent days, in recent months, to what happened over Belgium, Germany, I think the Netherlands, etc., etc. Can you give us an overview of what you investigated during the time of the COMETA report, and what were your conclusions that you presented in the report? And just for the people that are listening, the report, it was, I think, a 90 pages report that was published in 1999. So we're talking about 26 years ago. It's not yesterday. It's not an American thing. It's not a thing from now, but it's more than a generation ago now.
Well, yes, we reopened a number of cases and we interviewed a good number of people. Most of them, of course, were French because we were working in France. But we also reopened reports from all over the world. And what was very interesting was that those people were willing, when we interviewed them, were willing to speak up. They've been faced with something that they could not understand, especially the pilots. I mean, when we talk to pilots, these guys are used to observing. This is part of their job. So whenever they came back after having seen something, they were quite embarrassed, because if they spoke about it, then their bosses would take them for clowns, and so they usually did not report, which was too bad. But that was it. So when they were able to speak to us in an informal way, they were pretty happy, because they needed to share their experience. On the international side, there was not much we could do, because we could not interview people from other countries than France. But at least we reopened the cases, and we re-examined all the details and the reports that we had. And we then came to an interesting conclusion, which was that some of these things could be explained and had been explained, and there were new causes, physical causes that came up. That's one point. But there was a remainder of 3 or 4% of the cases that could not be explained. They were real. People had seen something. There sometimes was radar confirmation, optical means confirmation, and it could not be explained. So we decided that on these topics, we should be open as well. And this is when we said to government, look, there are things that happen which are bizarre, and you should be prepared to face them. As I said before, it didn't work much with them, but at least we did that. And one of our conclusions was that there was no explanation. Now, unfortunately, one of the possible explanations that would make sense, we did not say it was the cause of these unexplained cases, but visits from non-humans could be an explanation. And that answered all the criteria of the cases. Now, we never said that, of course, it had to be ETs, but we said what we could not done this possibility. And this is why the COMETA report has sometimes been quoted as saying that COMETA thought that there had to be ETs. And we never said that. We said that it's a possibility, and as a good scientist, you must not get this out. I mean, you must even consider this. But we may come back to this later.
Yeah, and so these days, I think there was Luis Elizondo that defined this concept, or brought to the surface the concept of the 6 observables that the American used to classify this kind of cases that were unexplained, like the observable was instantaneous acceleration, anti-gravity, transmedium, so from the atmosphere, so from space to the atmosphere to the water, and a few others. And a lot of people, of course, say, well, it's secret technology, it's American secret technology. But this kind of observations, the cases that you're mentioning, the 3-4% that you're mentioning, already in the 1990s, in the 1980s, in the 1970s, were presenting this kind of observable, were presenting this kind of physical behaviors that were not, let's say, ascribable to technology that we possessed as human. And this is, I think, why you said the possibility is there is non-human technology. Am I correct in saying that? The cases that you studied, were they already presenting these extreme behaviors?
Well, we did not exactly say it was possible. We said that we should not exclude the possibility that this advanced technologies come from outside. I mean, so we should not exclude that. But as you know, I mean, we have had in the last 20, 25 years at least two new explanations of UFO sightings. One is the sprites, and the sprites are these electromagnetic explosions or whatever that you can see in the sky. That could account for a few of the observations, not many. There was one other explanation, which is the thing that people see very close, like filaments of lights, and this has been explained by a projection from what people see from their retina. And if you worked about the migraines, people who have migraines have these manifestations. I mean, it's electric signals from the back of the eyes. And if that is projected outside, then you may believe that you see a UFO or something. So that's another possible explanation. But that doesn't go far. I mean, there are things that we still cannot explain. Now, there is another very good, there was something else that was disclosed by Beatrice Villarroel, the Swedish scientist in the conference in Italy, which was very interesting because she studied for the last 50 years some of the observations, and she suggests that some of the observations could be reflection from the sun onto satellites, which is quite interesting. So some of these things may be explained by this, but again, that will probably not uncover all the cases that are not explained. So the scientists today are also having not a possible explanation, but they are having the astronomers, the young astronomers, are working now on things which is quite interesting. And that was also said by our friend Jacques Vallée in the conference in Italy. They're saying that our cosmos may not be the only cosmos. That same as seems to be an infinity of planets, an infinity of stars, there may be an infinity of cosmoses. And our cosmos being only one of them, at one point, it may just get into another cosmos, and there may be interactions between the two. Now, if that were real, this is a totally new world. I mean, if we're only one cosmos amongst billions of cosmoses, that opens up for science a great deal. I mean, it's quite fascinating. So maybe we'll learn more from the astronomers in the upcoming years from this topic.
Yeah. But there are, so when we look at what people report today about encounters with, let's call it UAPs, so unidentified anomalous phenomena, we see that there is a very big spectrum of phenomena that are encountered. Some resemble physical objects, they look metallic or quasi-metallic, reflective, and they behave not like airplanes because they have this extreme characteristic of acceleration, 90 degrees turns, etc., etc. Others are plasma-like, like the lights. They could be confused with the phenomenon that you were mentioning, distortion of coming from eye issues or solar reflections, etc., etc. But still, there's a vast variety of phenomenon. It's not only one thing. It's not only saucers in the sky. It's not only orbs. We've observed quite a few different things. And if the universe is so vast, and we know that even our single universe contains billions of planets, it's very unlikely that in any case we're talking about only one phenomenon, one type of, even if it's a civilization, even if it's non-human intelligences, only one type of human intelligence and so on. So it's been 26 years since you completed the work on the COMETA report. How is your thinking evolved? Where are you now in terms of your thinking about what's going on?
My thinking is about the same, which is the more we know about these experiences, we may find good scientific explanations, but there are still cases which are very solid, where people have observed things that are, I mean, they mean they're objects. And when you see photographs of these things occasionally, they do seem to be objects. Some of them in the past have been confused with clouds and with whatever, but some of these cases that are still unexplained, when you look at them, they look like objects. I mean, and for a pilot, they look like vessels of some kind. So you cannot dismiss that. So that is a big interrogation. What is it? What can it be? I mean, with these types of accelerations, nothing that we can do today approaches what these things are doing. So there is a big mystery there. So we need to be working more. Maybe we'll find eventually something new. I don't know. But at this point, we're quite ignorant about what these objects can be.
Understood. And there is, when we look at the subject, the thing is, a lot of people don't want to approach this subject because there's so much stigma attached to it. And today we know for a fact that a lot of this stigma was actually manufactured by US intelligence agencies and other agencies, or probably other governments, that didn't want serious people, researchers, scientists to touch the subject, maybe for specific reasons. We know of reports coming out of the US, post-Blue Book, that were actually created to dismiss the phenomenon rather than studying it properly, like you did with the COMETA report. And the issue when we look at this phenomenon is that we can look at experiencers that even claim to have had contact with beings and received communications, to experiences of consciousness, contact with something that you cannot see but still send you signals, and objects in the sky. So there's a huge variety of phenomenon. Have you looked at all these different aspects when you were studying reports, or it was mostly objects in the sky that were seen by people? Have you had experience in studying different type of phenomenon and contact, and people claiming to have had contact as well?
Well, more or less, yes. But then you get into things that are not easy sciences. And it is true that one of the people who is the most interested in this is a professor in psychology. But when you go into psychology, then you're far from exact science. So you cannot prove any factual thing there. Also, when you go to very spiritual meaning of the thing, you get into religion, and that also is something which is far from practical science. So yes, we dwelled into this, but not very far, because very quickly we came out of the strict science, and we did not want to enter such thing, because then it's speculative, and we did not want to be speculative.
And just so the audience is aware, you were, I think, 30 members, 30 people that formed the working group to create this report. Am I mistaken?
Sorry, what was the question?
I think you were 30 different people working on this report, if I'm not mistaken. How many people were you?
Well, we've been as many as 12 at one point. 12.
Okay. Yeah. And you were coming from the space agency. Can you give us a sense of what people were involved in the formulating?
Yeah, of course. There were people who had been in the military. Usually they were retired, so they could speak about it, except that there were things that they would not disclose because it was confidential. But that didn't matter much. We had people from ONERA, one person from ONERA, which is a space and aeronautics research center in France. We had one person from the nuclear energy, which is quite fascinating as well, because as you know, many of these observations have taken place near nuclear sites. There were people from what was the other one? Well, from several scientific places. I just don't remember. Many military guys, science on ERA. Yeah, and some people from a research institute in France as well. So, and also legal people. We had legal people as well.
And you mentioned the nuclear scientists, etc. So there is a famous book today, which is UFO and Nukes from Robert Hastings, that detail hundreds of cases of UFO sightings close to nuclear facilities, whether it is military bases or nuclear stockpiling sites, etc., etc. Do you have any particular cases that were happening in France or in the France geopolitical region that you investigated? If I'm not mistaken, there were some cases that were very interesting from this point of view.
Yes, well, but from what I remember, there were not specific cases in our domain as there were in the US, for example. Some of the US examples are very interesting when the Iranian case was more airplanes, but the Americans have cases where a UFO approached a nuclear site, and then the commands were not working in it all. That was quite interesting, but no explanation. I don't remember. I don't think that we had any such interesting
reports
case in France or in Europe.
Not even reports close. I mean, you are a nuclear powered country, and not even cases close to nuclear facilities.
Well, not. I think they were, but not as significant as what we had in the US. We wondered, but there was not anything very significant there.
And what about Europe, the rest of Europe instead? What were the cases that were more, let's say, interesting because maybe more extreme behaviors or multiple reports, etc.? I think there was a flap in Belgium at some point that was studied by the COMETA report.
Right. That was interesting. That was in the 1990s. And that is very impressive because there were a big number of people seeing it. And what we call La Vague Belge was very important. It lasted several days. And there's been no explanation. I mean, we could not come too close to any explanation of what happened there. So our Belgian friends could not, and we could not either because we did not have more data than they had.
Mm.
So that was an impressive thing. There was one as well that covered all France at one point, and several thousand people saw something. And what's interesting there is that GEIPAN managed to prove that there had been a rocket stage return in the atmosphere, a Russian rocket that came down. And but that was only part of it, because the direction of that thing could explain some of the observations, but some of the other explanations, and as I said, there were several thousands, could not be explained by this object returning into Earth. So, yeah, some mysteries remain there, and we don't know whether we'll be able to solve these old things. So we're waiting for more happenings these days. But now it's getting more difficult because of all these drones coming around.
Yeah.
You had the Thai lanterns at one point that could be explained very easily. Now you have drones of all kinds. This is more difficult to explain because most of the time, even if it's a drone, we don't have the data, so there's nothing we can prove if it's a drone.
But talking about drones are becoming an incredibly important subject these days, because we started, I think it was last year, with a wave of sightings in the US territory, although it was not only the US, but the one that was reported widely was a flap of drone sightings in New Jersey, over New York, etc. And still to this day, no explanation of many of those cases, or at least the explanations that came out of the White House and the Pentagon just a couple of months ago, I believe, was that maybe a private company was testing some sophisticated machines there, but they don't account for everything. Now we have drones all over Europe. We had drones in the UK. We had drones in Ukraine. Some of these drones could even be perceived as Russian aggression on European soil. So we are also risking a military escalation. But still, the German authority and the Belgian authority, and this was, I think, the Swedish authorities have not been able to identify what these drones are, etc. What's your perception? I mean, from your experience as an official in the Air Force and space agency, is it really so difficult for official military and Air Force authorities with all sorts of advanced technology, radars, etc., not being able to identify these drones, even not being able to bring them down, because some failed to bring them down with advanced electromagnetic counter drone technology, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, the military people have means to identify drones if they come into the region. But if someone has seen something, the way he explains what he's seen and the details that he gives may not fall into some of the observations that have been made by the military guys. So that is a difficulty with dealing with observations, because, of course, the military have means and they can identify what they see. But if someone comes up to them and say, I've seen such a thing there and there, it's not documented enough. Even if they make photographs, usually that's not enough to conclude on the distance or the altitude or whatever. So this will make things more difficult now because of so many drones coming around. But again, one of the difficulties of the UFO is that it's usually not enough documented. And it's not either replicable in labs. I mean, the scientists, when they're working on something, they like to replicate the phenomenon in the lab. If they have enough data, they do it again in the lab. But when you have an observation from a person, wherever, the data that you have are not enough to do the same thing in lab. So there's no way you can really explain. If that observation comes into what the military have seen as well, that's pretty simple. They would say this was it. But in most cases, it's not that. They've seen something, but it's not part of the military observations, so it may end up with no explanation at all. And that would complicate the thing in years to come.
So when is military? Because right now it's several militaries in Europe are saying we don't know what these things are. And I understand that here I'm asking for speculation on your part. So don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna take what you say as Mr. Bescond said that this is this or that. Pure speculation. From your point of view, when military say we don't know what they are, is it that they don't want to show their cards? Is it that if they say there is Russian, then they need to take actions against and they risk escalation? Or do you think that there are cases still that really they don't know what they are? There are unexplained UAPs, let's say.
Well, I don't think this is a difficult problem, because if they have a real concern about one of these objects that they've seen, it will be marked confidential. They will not even speak about it. They will not even mention it. But if it's not confidential, if people have seen something that they know was a drone or whatever, they have no difficulties in speaking of it. So we remain in the same difficulties as we ever had with the military, but that is true for some civilians as well. When it's confidential, you don't play with secrecy. Then they will not even speak about it. So that's it. So we will ever have the same difficulties with the military guys and those who are dealing with confidential items as well. When it's confidential, you don't speak about it. So, but they will be willing to open up on things that are not confidential. And as you said, the military now are allowed to speak about it when it goes to things that are explainable. But that's a very big difference. And I believe that, I don't know what to say about the American approach today. I mean, they've created a group, the Arrow, which is working on the subject. But the first reports that we've had on these are not interesting at all. I mean, they do not disclose anything. So they may well, again, be playing with this. They will pretend that they've spoken about the whole thing, that they've disclosed cases, which is true, and that's it. Then they close the door, and whenever it's confidential, it will be the same as in the past. I mean, they won't even open it. They won't even discuss it.
Yeah.
And I believe that our military are the same in France, of course. And then especially if they believe that some of these things may be foreign vehicles, Chinese or Russian or whatever, they won't say that they don't know. I mean, they just keep it for themselves. And also, well, no, I'm not sure. I was about to say it's easy for those people occasionally to say, well, that's a UFO, that these people, they see things, that's it. So they disclose, and they might even, I believe that the Americans might well do this when there is something serious. If they can use the UFO belief, then they send this back to the people who observe UFOs and that are dreamers of some sort. So that is sort of a manipulation. You say something, you seem to say something, but do not disclose anything. I'm not sure, but I believe that may well be the case.
Understood. And the situation seems to be reversed right now comparing to when you were working on the COMETA report. So in the 1990s, in the US, nobody was talking about this phenomenon, at least not officially, right? Blue Book had been closed, the Condon reports had been published and dismissed everything about the phenomenon. It's all nonsense. There are no secret programs anymore, etc. Although we know now that there were programs funded by the Congress, promoted by 3 different senators. The program was OSAP, and then ATIP, and Elizondo and Mellon leaked their information to the New York Times, etc. But in the 90s, instead, Europe was active and France was at the forefront of discussing this phenomenon, right? Now it seems reverse. In the US, everybody was talking about it. We had the publication of the information about OSAP in 2017. Then the UAP task force was created, headed by Jay Stratton. Then the UAP task force became Arrow. And now we have whistleblowers under oath saying, we've been recovering crafts, we've seen beings, and this information has been denied even to presidents. So we are in a constitutional crisis. Now, in 1999, your COMETA report, if I'm not mistaken, was given to your then Prime Minister, I believe. And I don't think that anything happened after you presented the report. Now everybody in the US is talking about, is Europe gonna wake up? Do you think that something is gonna move in Europe, or we're simply gonna wait to see what happens in the US?
Well, I don't think much will happen. What we've seen is interesting because we've seen governments producing reports saying that they, of course, had been working on the topic for years, and they could not come to any conclusive decision on what the unexplained cases were. But there does not seem to be any danger. Whatever this is, it is not a danger, so period. I mean, that closes the topic. And the UK have done this. They've published a big number of things, and they're saying, we're still alert, we still look at what it can be, but that's it. I mean, we have nothing more to say. This is more or less what the US are going to as well. We did not speak about it before. We now have opened our files. This is the reports that we can give. There still are unexplained things. We don't know what it is, but that's it. I mean, nothing more. So I don't think it would be a big issue in the coming days. Although the population is, of course, interested, and because it's a mystery, and we don't like mystery. We'd like to have explanations. But I don't see much happening in the short term, nor in the midterm, because I do believe that there are things that we will never explain. Science is progressing, but the more we learn, the more we have to learn, and that's it. There will always be the mysteries of some kind, and the UFOs are part of this mystery. So I'm decidedly looking towards science to give more explanation of some of these items. And again, as I said before, with the new astronomers, the cosmoses, which are possibly many, maybe we'll have more explanations of some of the items we never understood, but there will still remain some mystery because we will still see things that we can't explain. So that's part of our life. Right?
So how do you interpret what's happening in the US right now? So you're saying, I don't believe that this is going to really go to disclosure. We're never really going to know what the US knows and what these things are, because we don't have the scientific methods, the scientific knowledge yet to explain a lot of these things. But when it comes to the geopolitical situation and the military situation, you have former military under oath in Congress saying, I've been part of secret programs. And so there is a constitutional crisis. Do you think that what's happening in the US is like different factions of the intelligence community at war, the factions that wants to disclose more and the factions that wants to keep it secret? And do you think that the faction that want to keep it secret is going to win at the end and everything is going to disappear?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure. But one thing that we do not often say is that the American government, one is a difficult situation because quite obviously with the initial report, the blue book that they produced at one point, it was not satisfying. And it even went further than they should have done. They lied. They lied to the American people because there were things and they said there's nothing interesting. So it was a lie. And it's interesting to see that at that time, the department which was in charge was the Air Force. Nowadays, it's no longer the Air Force. It's the Marine. It's the Navy, sorry. So the American government was in a big embarrassment because their predecessors had lied to the people. So they had to deal with this. So nowadays they come up and say, yes, in actual fact, this is what it was, this is what it is. And they produce reports of all kinds. And they would produce so much information with all the cases that were not disclosed before. They will confirm this. But then at one point, they will say again, but as you can see, there is no big danger. The population is not in danger. So that's it. Let's go back to work. And they will close the thing and it will come back as it was before. And I don't think that the people who are winning in the US that this should be an open issue will win, because there will always be cases where you don't know what it is. You wonder whether it's Russian or whether it's Chinese or whatever. And the military have to keep this a secret. I mean, they can't talk about it until they understand it. So I don't think that will change very much. I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe that at one point, when the final report on ARO will be published, that will be it. And we will come back into the same situation as before.
Understood. Well, I hope you are wrong, to be honest, because I would like to know more. But I'm not saying that you are wrong. I'm saying I hope. I hope that we will get more answer. But I understand your point of view completely, because it's been like this for decades after decades after decades. So it's not. To me, I don't have the historical memory that you have, because I started following this topic in 2017 when the New York Times article was published. And so, although I read the books of Richard Dolan about decades and decades of reports, I didn't live through the different phases of, oh, we're going to disclose. No, nothing to see. Ooh, we're going to disclose. Nothing to see. So maybe we are now going to the peak of the disclosure, and then we're going to go back down. But what feels different this time, and this is also a question for you, is that maybe it's the internet, maybe there's so much more communication, but it feels that the phenomenon engagement with humanity is increasing. It seems there are more people reporting strange things in the sky, but also communications that are particular. And a lot of people say, and this is very common in this environment, that once you start looking into the phenomenon, you take back with you the phenomenon come and visit you at home. Did you have any experiences, any direct experiences before you started investigating or after you started investigating this phenomenon?
No, not really.
Not really.
Not really. No.
Mm.
To me, it's the same thing. That, as you say, the fact that the internet now is there and there are so many exchanges around the world about the thing shows that more people are interested in the thing, and more people are saying, well, it should be investigated. Okay. But there's not much difference, I believe. No, I don't see this will have changed. Now, but this being said, I believe that what we did in 25 years ago with COMETA was at the right time, but now I believe is about the right time to do this again. Someone, somebody, some institute, whatever, maybe we could again do it again in France, but I suggested to the Sol Foundation that since the US is so much interested in the item just now, that maybe they would, the Sol Foundation, be willing to push for someone, some institute to work on a possible new report, as the COMETA did at that time. Some people in France tell me that the COMETA should be renewed, and some people should again produce one. Maybe so. I believe we'd better, before we start this, wait for what's going to happen after the Arrow concludes. When the Arrow in America produces its final report, then we'll have good ground for perhaps restart the working group on this.
Is your perception that governments, and I know that you again, speculation, I'm not asking you to disclose anything that you cannot disclose, but is your perception that government knows more about the origin of this phenomenon than what it can say, or is it really a mystery in your opinion?
I think they don't know more than, no, I don't think they know more. I mean, there have been publications where people say that in some of the cases, the Roswell case was a very interesting one, that they have unknown from human technologies. Okay, possibly. I'm not an expert on this. And quite occasionally we discuss this with some of our experts here, and they just do not conclude. They don't say it's not terrestrial, it's not human. I mean, they say it could be produced by whatever for such a reason or what. And so I don't have any proof that there is something coming from outside.
But you still don't exclude the possibility, because you cannot exclude the possibility scientifically.
Scientifically, you cannot exclude that. I mean, it's very pretentious to believe that humanity is the only one in the cosmos. I mean, when you have billions of stars and maybe cosmoses and planets, so the scientists now, the most interest that the scientists are having today in human affairs is trying to find life out in the cosmos. At one point, we were thinking intelligent life. They're not there yet. They're just looking for basic life. And we have pretty frequently nowadays molecules that are discovered in stars or in planets through astronomers' work that could be the basis for life. It's not formal yet. It's not demonstrated. It's not proven. But the more they work on this, the more they believe that they will eventually find molecules that are proof of possible life in the cosmos outside Earth. So that is one of the most important things that we should look at scientifically now, I believe. But that is far from ETs, I mean, because even if you have molecules that could prove to be life, that not yet intelligent life. I mean, it's far from that. But still, I mean, that one of the main scientific issues that we will work on in years or centuries to come is life outside Earth.
Yeah. And I understand it's really difficult. One thing is the personal reports. There are reports, even by very prominent military personnel. So, for instance, I think that there are more than almost 5 different astronauts from the US that made great claims about the existence of non-human intelligence and so on. But in a very speculative way, you've been at the head of a space agency in your country. If any space agency would detect intelligence life forms or advanced technology, NASA, in theory, is a civil administration, but is becoming now secret. It's been changed by President Trump to become part of the intelligence establishment. But in Europe, in France, in Italy, European Space Agency, etc., if contact was really made, would it have been classified immediately? Would the secret be put in place right away, or
I see what you mean. My belief is that in France, at least, and probably in Europe as well, if we were to find anything like this, we would be very cautious initially, as the way to talk about it. But I believe that we would say, I mean, the French government would be very cautious in the way it would announce it, but it would announce it. And I believe the European Space Agency would also publish what they found. And especially, I mean, the scientists are all willing to find something that no one else has found before them. So if there is something of this sort, they would push to publish.
Clear. Well, I think I've taken a lot of your time, Pierre.
Sorry for the interruption.
And no, it's don't worry. It happens with technology. But I really appreciate your time, and if things proceed and if we see new reports, there's also a very important movies coming out in 2 days, which is The Age of Disclosure, with at least 35 different prominent military intelligence and government people in the US speaking about this, including the current Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. So clearly things are still happening. The conversation is still hot in the US, but we'll see what happens in the next few months. Mm-hmm. And if something happens, I'll definitely call you back for some fresh comments on the matter.
Absolutely, I'm yours.
Thank you very much for your time. Have a lovely rest of the week.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. Something is Up is still at the very beginning, so every bit of support makes a huge difference in my ability to bring you more amazing stories and incredible guests. If you enjoyed this conversation and feel called to support the channel, I'd be super grateful if you could just click the like and subscribe buttons and share the video with anyone you think might enjoy. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.